with Robert Jonas and Jamon Moore. I'm Phillip Leyva, and we're here after a 3-0 victory for the San Jose Earthquakes against Sporting Kansas City. Gentlemen, we have a brace from Jeremy Ebobisse and a goal from Christian Espinoza, and we see Kade Cowell actually make a mark on the score sheet tonight with the assist on the first goal. So lots happening here on this 3-0 victory, especially with the red card for Sporting Kansas City. Jamon, I'm going to kick it over to you first. Your initial thoughts after the match.
Mark's got it right. Kade had a good game tonight. You can't say he didn't. No, he's right. Absolutely. Was it a perfect game? No, but I mean, he was involved in all three goals tonight. He had an assist. He had a second assist, which was really nice chip ball to Paul Marie, which made the cutback to Jeremy Ebobisse really simple. And he hit the ball over the top of Jeremy Ebobisse that created the dogso and the penalty opportunity. Great night from Kade Cowell. Hopefully this is what we keep seeing from him. But as we say pretty much every week, between Christian Espinoza and Jeremy Ebobisse, like this, the offense revolves around the kind of game they're going to have. And fortunately, Christian Espinoza continues this hot streak, and now Jeremy Ebobisse gets back into the act with the brace tonight. So, a good all-around performance. The red card has a lot to do with, how comfortable the result was. But, the Quakes were getting in control at that point anyway.
Yeah, and one thing I didn't mention in the intro here is the 20th anniversary celebration for the San Jose Ultras, and you can kind of hear some of the festivities going on in the background there as the Ultras are celebrating. During halftime, there's like a lot of partying and dancing going on. They had the big tifo. Robert, I know that you had tweeted that out. And so with all of that going on, with the team doing well, with the call-ups to the U.S. national team for Kade Cowell and Jackson Ewell, there's a lot to celebrate for Quakes fans. But Robert, I'm interested in what your thoughts are after this match.
Yeah, I think a player that impressed me from the beginning was Paul Marie. He had a pretty tough task with Johnny Russell, as Casey's really strong player on that side, and occasionally having to dealing with Graham Zusi on those overlap runs and cutting into the middle. And he just played really well. He's really stepped up this year as a dependable defender, and something that I think was something Luchi was going to need. This was a team that wasn't exactly shining at fullback last year overall, and now you've got a very capable player in Paul Marie that can play either side. Akapo had another strong game on the other side, really limiting KC at the point of the game where it was still 11v11. And I want to point out that JT, with his third clean sheet since taking over the starting duties in the third game of the season, he made some excellent saves tonight. I mean, tipping one off the crossbar, a laser from Zusi in the first half that he was able to push over as well. These are the kinds of plays that just sort of get lost when you look at a 3-0, 10-man down Kansas City team victory here at PayPal Park. But those are two players that I've got on my notebook that I was very impressed with tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just overall for me, the defense, with the center backs playing the way they are, there was that little, error in the very beginning of the match that Rodriguez had in the first minute. But then after that, it seemed like he really found himself. He found his feet. He was able to get involved in the attack. I think in my notes here on that goal that had like the enormous pass sequence for the Quakes, I mean, there was something like 10 passes or something like that there, right? We saw the ball distributed all throughout the pitch. JT Marcinkowski was the one who started it, but there was definitely input from Rodriguez and Mensah and a lot of the other players on the pitch as well. So we got to see a really nice balance of like a flow from this team. We saw it prior to the red card, and obviously we saw it a lot after the red card as well. But Robert, one thing you pointed out during the match is the Quakes actually gave a lot of space to Sporting Kansas City in the second half after the red card, and we actually saw them with quite a bit of the ball, and they were able to create a few opportunities as well.
They were, and I think the Quakes weren't necessarily in coasting to victory mode, but it wasn't a sort of as fast and foot forward game that they were playing in that first half. The first 8 minutes or so until they did get that penalty, until they did get that goal. Espinosa with an excellent finish at the back post, Kade Cowell getting his first point of the season, which we were talking about earlier. These are things that those first few minutes seemed a bit cagey, but the Quakes really controlled it at that point. And I imagine they came out of the locker room just in maintain mode. Just don't let Kansas City get too comfortable, but not we sort of jam this game down their throats, like maybe we
some maybe would have liked to have seen. Yeah, I was thinking that too. And then there was also, we didn't really see any substitutions or moves from Luchi Gonzalez until pretty far into the match, right? We after the red card, we're kind of talking about, well, maybe this would be an opportunity, especially if the Quakes are in control, to see maybe some of the bench players get some time, especially considering the Quakes have a U.S. Open Cup match coming up after the match against RSL on the road, right? So they had to travel to Salt Lake City, and then afterward they have to play that match against Monterey. So there's kind of the schedule could be getting quite a bit crowded here. So it would have been interesting to see some of those guys. But Jamon, I'm kind of interested in your thoughts here tactically, how the team looked prior to the red card and then afterwards, and then kind of the approach that Luchi is taking here, not necessarily going with a lot of the subs early on and allowing that starting 11 to get a lot of the time together.
Yeah, I think there was an opportunity to kind of create some chemistry in the passing game tonight. Once the game really started to open up, the Quakes team was able to move the ball pretty much at will, and at times they had to resist just immediately trying to break and go forward. Normally, when they're 11v11, you can see like, hey, they are just like going to go forward. They're going to be progressive with the ball as soon as they think that opportunity presents itself. And we hear Luchi, talk all the time about that type of ball progression and breaking lines and such. Tonight, I think they had to be a bit more restrained and really kind of see the game out and make sure that they weren't going to make some sort of mistake, even up 2-0 in the second half, that was going to give a glimmer of hope, in this game to Sporting Kansas City. And a lot of that was due to the fact that they could just move the ball and keep it going, and then, take off a minute or two at a time, just being able to comfortably move the ball. What's so different, I think, about the Quakes teams over the last, 3, 4, 5 years really has been this ability to be able to pass and to go forward, to go backward, to go forward, and be able to move the ball comfortably. Quakes teams, before that, struggled in the passing game, stringing 20 passes together. This team seems to do it with a fair bit of regularity. They can string 20 passes together if they choose to hold the ball and choose to use a little bit of it. A lot of times, though, they're just too impatient for it, and I think like that's what Luchi wants. So it's not a criticism. It just means that they're looking to kind of get forward quickly. So I was fine with that. I think it's all part of seeing the game out, learning how, as a team that is not used to being in situations where you get to see many games out, actually doing that in a game tonight in a very comfortable way. Yeah, at times, you're going to have to kind of drop in, and Sporting Kansas City is going to try to have the ball and break you down. But I never felt like the Quakes were desperate defensively. I always felt that they look in control, and that's such a huge difference between this team and just the last 3-4 years with Almeida, and even with Cavello. The teams just were desperate on the defensive side, and that kind of allows them the ability to let the other team have the ball a bit, but to keep it under control, to keep the ball in front of them, to put pressure on, and to find ways to be able to do that.
Yeah, and I think for me that was one of the questions coming into this season was how comfortable would the Quakes look when they had those opportunities to get later into the games, when they had the goal advantage against other teams, when they had possession, would they look more comfortable with the ball? Because under the Matias Almeida system, they were often scrambling. They had a lot of possession, right? If you go back and look at the possession stats for the Quakes under Matias Almeida, they had the ball a lot. But I think you're right, Jamon. There wasn't that sense of calm, of that the trust in the system and the stability of the defense to be able to pass freely. And look at the team tonight. I mean, against Sporting Kansas City, not only were they making those 20 pass sequences, as you referenced, but there was flair in there as well. I mean, it's beyond just being normal for this team to be able to string together those passes. We're seeing back heels from Jamiro Montero. We're seeing really risky runs from the wingers that perhaps they wouldn't take before because they would be too concerned about their defensive responsibilities. So there's a lot more going on here under this system that, yes, brings in that calm for the team so they can actually do a lot more to get forward and put balls in the back of the net.
Well, also, and this came up during the game, Phil. I turned to you at some point and said, "Has Carlos Gruezo touched the ball yet?" It seemed like he, what was he doing out there? And then you pulled up the heat map for me, and he'd already had 32 touches at that point in the first half. He was having an impact in the game in the way that he is meant to have an impact in that defensive midfield role. It, very good position side to side. You can see him sort of sharing that space with Jackson at times. He's kind of switching positions, but just being clean and just he's not taking the chances, which I think is exactly what you're mentioning. It allows a little more of that sort of flexibility as you get higher up the pitch. Those guys can kind of make the plays, knowing Carlos is there to sort of clean up if something happens.
Absolutely, and I think with Jamiro Montero, that gives him the flexibility to play a lot more laterally. We saw in the goal that was scored early on in the match from Christian Espinoza, Jamiro Montero actually make it out onto the wing to be a part of that, back and forth with Kade Cowell, which led to the cross that went all the way to the back post that Espinoza was able to finish. And so Gruezo playing that, stable position allows a lot for this midfield beyond himself. So looks like we're going over to Luchi Gonzalez now.
All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight following San Jose's 3-0 win over Sporting Kansas City. Let's begin with questions for Luchi Gonzalez, starting with one from Robert Jonas.
Thank you. Coach, congratulations.
Thank you. Coach, congratulations. It was a very comprehensive win tonight. Obviously, the red card plays a big role, but with all the kind of distractions perhaps that the team was experiencing this week, how proud of you are the guys to come out tonight and put such a good performance?
Yeah, definitely very proud. You saw their determination and early urgency when the game started. I even felt it, I think, in the warm-up and in the locker room in terms of these guys want to get after it, they want to compete and play. So really proud of the group to have a performance like that. I know, like you said, the early red card does make it difficult for the opponent, but look, I think Dortmund played today. They were up a man, and the game is unpredictable. Sometimes you can get casual or loose, and I'm proud of our guys to have a mature performance in the second half, and also show that same determination to attack and press and score the third goal, which I thought was really important. And then look, regarding the experience we had in New York and then kind of through the week, I said it in an earlier press conference midweek, the guys from first training back, they were competing, they were pushing each other. They love the game. They love to be around each other, and so they carried that through the week, and I felt they performed well tonight because of their mentality to compete and I want to play and take advantage of every moment.
Next, Jamon Moore.
Unmuted.
Hi, Luchi. Congratulations, on the win tonight. You had a lot of players who had good nights. And but one that stood out that maybe has struggled a bit this season is Kade Cowell. He had an assist. He had a secondary assist that was really nice to Paul Marie, who set up the cutback. And then he put that ball over top to Jeremy Abobasi that created the dog-so red card and the penalty. Talk a little bit about, Kade and, the work that he's been putting in and continues to get these opportunities to start. And tonight, you were rewarded, for keeping with him.
Yeah, Kade's a young man who I got to know last year working with the national team. He got a camp, well, actually a year and a half ago, but in 2021, he was in a camp in California, which was my first camp. And that was kind of my first experience in terms of seeing his potential and his mentality at a young age. So I was excited before the season started, before the preseason, to just work with this young player and know that he's already has experience in the league, but has such a high ceiling and can continue to grow and develop and help this club and this team compete and win. Tonight was a great example of, I felt like, decisiveness. He was very clear when he wanted to cross, when he wanted to shoot, when he wanted to combine his pressing, forward pressing, back pressing. And then he showed a good commitment to stay connected defensively. So whatever the decision was, if there was a mistake or not, or it worked or not, I also saw like an EQ, like an emotional intelligence to be calm and to just fight for the next moment and be confident in the next moment. So really complete game, and it's just, to me, an example and a reference for more games to come, more opportunities to come for him. He's going to be going with the national team, so we'll look forward to hopefully him getting opportunity there and representing our league, our country, our club, and we'll have him back ready for our next game against Salt Lake. But yeah, definitely proud of his development on and off the field, and he trains hard and he's open-minded. So at the end of the day, not surprised that he can have a performance like tonight.
Let's now take a question from Paula Maruri.
Muy buenas noches. What did you like the most about your team's offense and defense tonight? Thank you.
Look, I think we set the tone early. We wanted to push the game, push each moment early, play in their half. I actually thought Kansas City, the first few minutes were pretty imposing, but the fact that we were able to kind of turn that momentum around quickly and early and then create our own chances and create our own presses, I thought was great. It showed a good mental, like I said earlier, determination of the boys. But in the attack, what I liked that we had volume of ideas in terms of crossing and passing into the box, shooting, even if blocked, but just having quick releases to shoot. I thought we got more shots on target, which ended in goals, and so that's a correlation. And then defensively, I saw us look for good moments and triggers to press, and then when it was broken, getting behind the ball. And we had to defend in a low block sometimes. But what I liked is we didn't do it with 9 or 10 players. We were able to get 11 guys behind the ball and be compact to weather those moments in the lower block.
Let's now take a second question from Robert Jonas. Go ahead, Robert.
Thanks. We saw tonight the team celebrate the San Jose Ultras and their 20 years of supporting this club. And, the guys were out in pregame wearing the T-shirts, and it looked like everyone after the game was able to go over there and say thank you to that group. How important is, they've been, from your experience, you've just been here a short period, but knowing the influence they've had on the players on the field, as well as, you guys have been just, having a fantastic start to the home season and just, getting that fan support. What was it like being able to kind of see them give that support and show them the support back tonight?
Yeah, that was a great turnout from the Ultras and all of our fan base. But specifically with the Ultras, it's a very historical fan group in the league, and a sustained support for this game and for this club over all the experiences, ups and downs and periods of the club. So you feel their energy, you feel their passion, and congrats to them in the 20-year anniversary. And we wanted to make them proud, and I'm glad we had a performance like tonight where we were able to do that. I remember after the Toronto game, we were disappointed with tying, but although we did some really good things, we pushed to try to win there at the end. And the members of the Ultras just being really positive and showing belief and energy that we're going to keep fighting and for the next one. And so you feel that, and especially in an MLS season through ups and downs, you want that unconditional support and desire and energy. So, thank you to them. Thank you to all the members and the long-term commitment, and for many more years to come. And hopefully we can give them more things to celebrate.
Thank you, Luchi. Let's take 2 more questions. This first one comes from Fabian Renkel. He asks, please, if you can please give your thoughts on Christian Espinosa's decision to give Jeremy Avosi the penalty opportunity. Thank you.
Yeah, look, this is a strong collective group. They train that way. They compete. They push each other. But when that final whistle blows and when they walk off the field at the end of a training, they're very together and strong as a unit. So I'm not surprised by Christian having that selflessness and gesture to he has been taking the PKs and could have very well stepped up to take another. But for him to show selflessness with J-Bo is amazing, and it's a great example of who he is, not just as a talented player, but as a human being and as a teammate. And it was great to see J-Bo step up with confidence and put it away. And he's been working hard, and whether he scores or not, he's always there to try to help his teammates compete. And that's something that me as a coach I can be very proud of.
And one final question from Jamon Moore.
Unmuted.
Hi, Coach. Thanks for taking a second. Obviously, in a clean sheet, there's a lot of defensive side heroes as well. It felt like tonight the entire defense, played well from the very beginning. One of the things that's been noticeable since the beginning of the season is how much more calm they seem in the back. Even when there's a mistake, they feel like they can kind of correct it, win the ball back, and be able to play back out again. And there's no desperation in terms of, just clearances and sliding all over the place. They keep their feet and do a good job keeping the ball in front. In a game like this, and a team that's struggling and they're desperate for goals, how important do you think that kind of mentality is to being able to make sure you keep control of the game, particularly when you get the early goal like that?
Muted.
Yeah, I believe the first part of your question is just, what has helped the team stay calm in those moments, maybe in the build up, if we're receiving pressure, even if we lose the ball and we're defending. So I think the group shows like a patient urgency where we want strong, fast actions and intensity, but at the same time we want to be calm and know that we can weather the moment, we can get through the moment. So look, in terms of there's different ways to try to work on that, improve it, develop it. But in training, we're going to have a build up and we're going to try to bring the ball forward and break lines. And there's going to be mistakes. Players are going to make mistakes. It's a game of mistakes. In fact, if they're not making them, we're not trying to do enough. We're not trying to impact the game enough, collectively and individually. So we know mistakes are going to happen, but can we have a good press after loss? Can we have a good reaction collectively to get it back or to get defensive in a good defensive recovery shape? So I think when you do those things well, and which we're trying to do, then you can be more confident in your build-up, knowing that we as a group, we've got each other's back if there's a mistake to try to get behind the ball or get it back. So we want to keep working that way and keep improving that.
All right, thank you, Luchi, and thank you everyone for the questions. We'll be bringing over a player here shortly.
Take care. Thank you. Good night.
Okay, let's start with that question that you asked, Jamon, because you're talking about the sort of calm that this team seems to have when they're, so defensively settled in. And one of the things that Luchi just mentioned was they're not afraid to go out there and make mistakes. And we've heard Luchi mention this before, right? This comes from his, not only years of experience as a coach, but also as a teacher. And as a former teacher myself, this is something that you kind of talk about with your students. And I'm really glad to hear that he's bringing this into his approach to coaching as well. As look, mistakes are going to happen, and yet we find ways to learn from them, to recover from them, and to be better after that. And sometimes, we just work with what we have. And again, going back to the very beginning of the match when Rodriguez made that early mistake, they bounced back from it. They recovered very quickly, and they were poised the entire time. So, Jamon, going back to your question here, just kind of your thoughts about Luchi's response to the Quakes and their calmness on the pitch up against Sporting Kansas City.
Yeah, he's absolutely right. Of course, it's a game where if you don't press the issue when you try to get forward, you're never going to be creative enough to be able to surprise the other team and be able to break them down, particularly in a game where there's been a red card and they're going to sit in a low block. You have to be able to do things that are going to be surprising. That starts with the build out. If the build out is predictable, it's easy to press, easy to get you to turn the ball over, easy to know where you're going to go next, easy to step and steal it. And now you're under pressure, right? So yes, you have to be able to be creative. You have to be able to be some level of unpredictable when it comes to the build out. I think what's interesting is that when they do make that mistake, just, how there's in the previous, team, people would just be flying all over the place because of the 1v1 defending. And even when, they tried to bring in a more traditional defense last year, how easy they were to kind of penetrate into the box and be able to just get them to lose their feet. That's all changed. It's really good to see. You have to give a ton of that credit to Jonah Mensah. You really do, because he's just unflappable back there. He's seen everything there is to see in this league. He's won an MLS Cup. He knows what it takes. He knows defense, wins championships, and he knows. I think one of the things that's really interesting about Rodriguez, who, by the way, has the second most interceptions in the league this year, according to a stat that was shown on the broadcast tonight. One of the reasons I think Rodriguez looks so good is because Mensah is so calm. He kind of gets Rodriguez to play within himself. I think when Rodriguez was beside Nathan, I think Nathan's just, kind of like antsiness at times makes probably Rodriguez a bit Nancy. You know how it is sometimes where players are kind of sometimes the product of the other players around them. Like if you've got good players around you that play a certain way, players adapt their style and they kind of fit in with a particular group. And for me, one of the big changes is how Rodriguez looks. And I think it's just because of Mensah. And then Paul Marie, someone mentioned it. Like, he's having, quite a season. He's unseated Miguel Trauco as that starting left back. And, it's quite interesting because I mentioned to Luchi a couple weeks ago, he may be the most consistent game in, game out player. You know what you're going to get from Paul Marie. He's solid on defense, not great all the time, but he's solid on defense, threat going forward. He always gets involved in the attack. He keeps people guessing. Him and Christian Espinoza keep people guessing how they're going to play those 1-2s in order to try to spread Espinoza. Sometimes that's what happened on situation. Now, this year, he's more on the left side. And so now he's trying to get that same type of work in with Kade Cowell. And it's starting to bear fruit. It's taken them some time in order to get comfortable with each other. Tonight, I think you saw the first game that they've looked the most comfortable with their pairing this season. And you see what happened when Kade Cowell now that they've gotten comfortable. Why? Because they've had 3-4 games in a row together. It's not, constantly changing behind Kade. And I think that's had a big difference. And I don't mean to leave out Carlos Acappo because I think he had a solid game too.
Right. And with you are seeing
the fact that there's not a lot of talk about there is actually a really good thing.
Yeah, no, I would agree. And I think that you give the opportunities for some of the other players to get involved in that as well. So like I mentioned earlier, Jamariel Montero kind of mixing it up there on that side of the attack, giving him some of that freedom as well. But Robert, maybe some of your thoughts here about that defensive poise as well, considering that was a really big part of kind of like the outcome of this match.
Yeah, absolutely. I've talked to a lot of folks within the club, and they're all so impressed with Jonah Mensah and the way he's come in and really been another team captain. If you had to give defensive captain responsibilities to anyone, it's going to be to Jonah. And he had that captain's role in Columbus. He's not a stranger to leading a team both on the field and off the field. And so, he's a player with an exceptional pedigree as a player. But you've almost included another role that he's playing for you behind the scenes that, begins to kind of come out on game day in the same ways that Jamon you're mentioning with Rodriguez, and kind of giving him that compliment. That's exactly what training is all about. It's Mensah being that rock in the back that the others are looking to, and he brings that pedigree and that credibility that allows all the defenders to know that he's there and he's got their back. So the Quakes for better or for worse, well, for better certainly have really added a piece that you could say is more than a single piece, and I think that's an important thing to remember about that kind of signing. It's not just on game day that the Quakes are gaining the benefits.
Yeah, and how interesting that this happens after it was really an injury, right? An unforeseen circumstance with Nathan going down that had the front office looking for a replacement, a very quick replacement. And they ended up bringing in Jonathan Mensah, right? So we had to give the credit there as well for being really quick to make that response. I don't know that this is something that would have happened in prior seasons. I mean, who knows, right? Under Jesse Fiorinelli, we saw a much different approach where there weren't a lot of internal signings from within the league. And we've seen a lot more of that more recently under this new leadership, right? So having Jonathan Mensah has been like quite the change for this team and has brought quite a different approach to how calm they are on the ball. And I think like it's not just affecting the person who's next to him. I think it affects a lot of the players around him as well. The fullbacks, I think even, a player like Kade Cowell really benefits from having a leader like Mensah who is going to be there and just provide that calmness and that poise for the team. Another topic that he talked about too, Jamon, you had asked about the red card and how
can we fit in Anae's birthday before I get too much deeper into the show? I just want to get it out here while I still have these comments available.
Dom
Peters wants to make sure that we wish Dominic a very happy birthday.
Yeah. So Dominic Peters brought this up. Dom, who is has been with the Quakes Academy, has played goalkeeper at the collegiate level, wants us to wish, as we should, Ane a very happy birthday. And so, Ane, our dear friend, who is a big part of Quakes Epicenter, happy birthday to you.
Well, he's got some emojis he's trying to put in there, although they didn't really come through correctly. So we got a poop shape, a red heart shape, a tongue out shape, and then another heart shape. So just imagine what that would look like, I guess.
Thank you for that, Don. Much appreciated. Love you, Ane. I hope you're having a wonderful evening, and it's really great that the Quakes were able to get a 3-0 win for you. All right.
Yeah. Happy birthday, Ane. We all appreciate you very much.
Yeah, I want to, back to my first question to Luchi tonight, something that, this team has been not so much in the spotlight all week, but certainly the incident last week, has, sort of carried over in a lot of conversations around the league. But like Luchi said, this team, understood what they could do and really embraced the path forward and played exceptional. You didn't see anything that sort of might even hinted at last week. There was a little bit in the pregame anthem that might have suggested a little bit of that. But other than that, when the opening whistle began, the Quakes were all business and looking to just look forward and getting that 3 points is their goal, and they didn't let the distractions sort of hold them back. So that was something I was very impressed with. Something I was looking for this week, to see if the Quakes would be able to be that. Because, a team that shows that kind of poise is a team that can overcome all different types of adversity. And so this is just one example that they came through with flying colors.
Yeah, and I would say, like, the result in New York, I wouldn't let that, obfuscate what happened with this team and, like, how much of a collective effort they put in response to that as well. Like, when that incident happened, these guys really came together and supported one another. I think it was very clear, right? And again, going back to that idea of leadership, from Jeremy Abobasi to the other individuals who were, stepping up and standing up for their teammates in this very difficult situation. I mean, there were signs that these guys could come together as a collective and that they would galvanize around, some difficulties.
Hey everyone, we'll be having forward Kade Cowell here in 5 minutes. So we'll have you. We'll keep everyone posted here in a bit.
Okay. Great.
Again, we'll have forward Kade Cowell here joining us in about 5 minutes.
I asked for Kade. Ask and you shall receive. There you go.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you, Jamon, for that. But anyway, I personally wasn't too surprised that they came out together as a collective and they performed really well together. But I think that's a really good point to bring up, Robert, to ask Luchi about that and to get a little bit of insight as to how this team was going to respond.
Well, I think it's very fair too. I mean, this is not a Quakes team that's a perennial top of the league finisher. They struggle to do well, and so any adversity can sometimes have some pretty damaging effects. I'm much more. I'm beyond encouraged by what I saw tonight in a game that came against a last place team. Sure, a team that's only scored 2 goals all season. Okay, but those aren't sure things in MLS. No game is a sure thing in MLS, and they could have easily have had distractions that sort of kind of made it difficult for them tonight, and we really didn't have to see them experience any of that. And that's something that again, every week when adversity comes up, you want to know that they can get through it, and now they have an example where they did.
Yeah, and to be fair to the Quakes defensively, the Sporting Kansas City was coming into this match with some of their better offensive players after not having them for a large part of the season, right? Not only did they have Shallowy, who is quite the antagonist for Quakes fans, right, after some of the comments he's made previously about the team, but they also had Johnny Russell coming back into the team, and they had Alan Pulido, who came in, who is, kind of I wouldn't say a storied figure, but a pretty well-known guy around the league, and obviously after playing in Liga MX too. So, like, having those guys come in and giving them a little bit more offensive punch, knowing that Peter Vermees has quite a bit of experience in this league. We had talked about whether or not he's on the hot seat for this team, even though he's been around for quite a while. He's established the system for them. He's won MLS Cup with them. They're having quite a bit of struggle. But again, it wasn't a given that the Quakes were going to win this game, despite the fact that Sporting Kansas City had only scored 2 goals. So
yeah, I mean, usually when a team hasn't scored in 7 halves, you're kind of like, oh my goodness, they're due. And then when they probably get one in, they're going to put a bunch in, and I was fully prepared to see this be like a 3-2 game because, maybe maybe the waterworks were going to open for both teams at the same time, and we were just going to have an up and down affair. And the Quakes got the 3 goals, but again, it was that really kind of solid defense. That structure is always in place, and almost no matter what the situation, even when a mistake was made, that structure was there to kind of like help them and bail them out, and being calm and winning tackles. I mean, there's only really the one situation that even felt like, is going to be a problem tonight was maybe that tackle in the box that potentially could have been a penalty the other way. But even at that situation, it was would have been 3-0, that would have made it 3-1. Again, the Quakes got the win tonight, partially because, of the red card, obviously, but they played, much better than Sporting Kansas City did, and gave them, I think, the right opportunities. And it's just like, you're just not used to seeing this with the Quakes team. They just they're calm with the ball. They're moving it. They're passing it. Even in a 1-0 game or a 2-1 game or anything like that, these 1-goal games, they don't really seem all that flapped about it. And I didn't feel like, they played all that differently 3-0 than they had when they were 1-0 against Colorado or 2-1, against Vancouver. It felt very much like the same team at home. Consistently, we're seeing, I think, pretty much the same Quakes team in and out. They're generating about the same amount of expected goals in every game if you take out the penalties. That there's a consistency. And for an analytics guy like me, and trying to weigh, how is this team performing over the first 10 games of the season, and how does that predict, how they're going to play going forward? The numbers are going to look really, really good if they keep playing at home the way they are. Now they're going to come across that tough stretch. I know I said that a couple games ago, but if you take a look at who's coming up next, they got RSL, they've got LAFC a couple times in there, the Galaxy, Seattle. There are some tough games coming, and they've kind of had the bottom of the West and been able to get out with results at home and against the bottom of the West. Now they're going to have to be able to get results against the top of the West and more games on the road than they've had so far.
And, you were talking about the possibility that if Sporting were able to get that goal, that the floodgates could open, that, there was always that fear that they can suddenly turn on and be quite imposing force for the Quakes. Robert, you had mentioned while we were in the press box that we were kind of expecting this sort of thing to happen with Jeremy Ebobisse, right? Mm-hmm. And that, he's just waiting for that goal because he could score in bunches, right? And it was like, once he gets that first goal or starts getting that opportunity, then we might be seeing him score a lot more goals. Jamon, you had asked at the last home game, I think you were wondering what the movement was looking like at the top of the formation with Jeremy Ebobisse, right? Because I know that Alex Morgan had said that it looked like he was lost out there, at least on the broadcast. And so that was something I was kind of watching for a little bit this match. And I noticed that when the Quakes have that possession and that poise that we've been already discussing throughout, they are more likely to take a lot more of those opportunities towards the front of the formation and have that as sort of like an additional part of their attack. So I was noticing Jeremy Ebobisse getting a lot more meaningful touches at the top of the formation and being able to work with and distribute throughout the midfield and really get involved in the match, right? And I feel like when Jeremy Ebobisse is getting involved in that fashion, he is finding other ways to get involved in the attack as well. So not just on the passing and holding up in the traditional 9 as he did, but also when he is running up and creating those opportunities for himself. And I think that's really Jeremy Ebobisse at his best. Yeah.
Yeah, and to that point too, I think we were talking about this earlier as well. It's great to see the Quakes on offense. The players sort of taking different runs and different angles, and there were times earlier this season, and especially last season, where you'd see 2 or 3 or 4 guys crash the box all together, and you're just hoping the cross gets somewhere in that line of players and maybe one of them get it in. But tonight with Jeremy popping back sometimes, his second goal of the night was a fantastic positional play. Paul Marie pulling that ball back, Jeremy waiting right where he needed to be for that pass and not trying to crash the box too aggressively is something I'm not sure I saw as much of in the past, and now feel more comfortable that the Quakes attack is starting to kind of understand what each player can do in those individual moments. And that I think is something to be encouraged by. And if Kade's pulling the string like he did tonight, good things will happen. I think we have Kade coming up.
We're now joined by forward Kade Cowell. So let's start with a question from Jamon Moore.
Unmuted.
Hi, Kate. Congratulations on the win tonight. And I think, importantly for you, you got an assist tonight. You got a good secondary assist to Paul Marie, who created the cutback to Abobasi. You also put the ball over the top to Abobasi that turned into the Dogso situation and the penalty. So you're involved in all 3 goals. How good does that have to feel to you tonight that you really put a stamp on this game?
Obviously, it felt really good individually, but also glad to help get a huge 3 points at home and keep our streak alive.
Next, Robert Jonas.
Thank you. Yeah, as Jamon said, a really good game tonight. You have an opportunity with the national team coming up this week. How was it important for you to get that momentum to leave San Jose with 3 points and now have an opportunity with the national team to continue that momentum?
Before I leave, going to camp, feeling really confident, and hopefully get some good. In the game. And
let's switch over to Paula Maruri for a question. Paula?
How important is this result for the next game coming up? Thank you so much, and congratulations on helping Cristian Espinosa to score the first goal to set the tone for the game. Thanks.
Yeah, I feel like every game, but they're all really important. This one was really important too, going to a tough game and away in Utah. It's always tough to play there, so I feel like it's really good. I feel like all of us are really confident going in, so that's always huge and helps a lot.
Let's do a quick second round. Going back to Robert Jonas for a second question.
Thanks. I asked Coach this question as well. With the events of last week, with the talk of the incident in New York and all of the effects it could have had, you guys as a team really came out strong tonight. There's a lot of poise, a lot of confidence, a lot of calmness on the ball. What was it like this week in preparation for this game, and how do you and you feel your teammates kind of showed and what that's going to mean for this team moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, like always, working hard as possible every single day, and there's a lot of preparation going into this game. It was a must need 3 points, so we went out there and got it.
And one final one from Jamon Moore.
Unmuted.
Hey, Kate, thanks for taking a second. It's been noticeable more recently how well you and Paul Marie are starting to kind of gel together over there. Obviously, he's played with this team a lot as a right back, but getting this kind of consistent time at left back, it seems like you both are getting comfortable with each other. Can you talk about that combination that you have with Paul, and also from a defensive side and the changes that Luchi's brought? It feels like you're getting more involved on the defensive side as well. So if you could give us some insight in both of those areas. Thank you.
Muted.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we're really good friends off the pitch, and it's not easy for either of us to play on the left side and use our weak foot on sometimes, especially in defense. That can be really challenging. But he stepped up and done a really good job on the left. I mean, it's not easy at all to do, so he's doing really well. So yeah.
All right, that wraps up tonight's press conference. Thank you, everyone. Congrats, Kate, for the win.
Thank you.
Really interesting to hear Kade talk about the difficulty playing with his left foot on the left side, because I never would have guessed that was actually a struggle for him, considering some of the passes he was putting across the box tonight, right? Especially on the goal that Cristian Espinosa scored. I mean, what do you think, guys? Like, Kade, brevity first and foremost.
Yeah, see,
in and out, right?
I know that. I know that with Kade, we're gonna get some brevity, but that's okay because we get long answers from Luchi. We don't necessarily need long answers from everybody, right? Yeah. So answers are short to the questions. Lindsay with a great comment there.
We know we're not going to get a novella whenever Kade speaks, but he did point out, and I think he sees it too. This team is really gelling, and this is the kind of overall game performance that he is supposed to be a part of, or he's expected to be a part of. Maybe that's a better way of putting it. And so when he's feeling it and his teammates are feeling it, that's when you can be pretty pleased about things. So maybe short Kade Cowell answers are all we can expect, but he delivered the short answers we were looking for tonight.
Yeah,
so.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Jamie, you got any thoughts on the Kade?
We've got something out of that. It's interesting that he plays all this time on the left, and then he talks about it's less comfortable to play on the left. So it's interesting to me. Like, does that mean he wants to play on the right, and or does he want to play striker? Like, I would like to kind of maybe follow up with him on that sometime and just understand that a bit better. So, one of the things with, so you got basically two wingers here. One plays an inverted winger with Kade, even Benji, if they play over there, even a Sonny Buddha, if he played over there, would also be an inverted winger. So your left side, no matter who you're running out there, is going to be an inverted winger plus an inverted outside back, that's actually kind of unique. Usually you want one of those two to be left-footed, and Miguel Trauco is left-footed, right? And then on the right, you've got a natural winger with Christian Espinoza. So what normally you see is that when you got an inverted winger, they tend to cut in. They're able to shoot on that right foot. They tend to score more goals. They tend to get fewer assists. With a natural winger like Christian Espinoza, they tend to get more assists, like Espinoza has throughout his career, and they tend to get fewer goals. A bit of a flip tonight, because you have Espinoza scoring goals, third most in the league with 5, right? And 3 of those from open play. And you've got Kade Cowell, who's getting assists tonight. So, and took a really nice hard shot with his left foot going away from goal. So, it's really interesting to kind of see how both of them are coming into these particular roles this year. And, we'll see. Is this a one-time thing for Kade? My fear with Kade is that he's got this kind of very unique, level of talent that comes out in certain situations and then disappears for 3 games and then comes back out again. And you're kind of always hoping that the next game is going to be one of those games where you get to see the cool Kade Cowell stuff. Well, we got to see that tonight, right? Can he create that consistency that he talked about after his game against Serbia with the U.S. national team in the preseason, when he said he wants this to be a consistent season? Well, that's the thing that now he needs to produce. And he knows it. And he said it himself, this is the type of game that I have to be consistent as a player. If I'm going to get that call to Europe, I have to be consistent as a player. And then he said more recently that he wants to go to Europe and that, he thinks he's ready for that. But, I think it is important to show this consistency. Can he take this and then build that into something more with the U.S. national team, have another great national team game against Mexico? I think U.S. fans would really love to see that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that is a big question to bring up, is how is Kade going to respond, and is he going to find that consistency? I think Quakes fans might be a little bit traumatized when it comes to some of these U.S. national team call-ups, because sometimes some of our prospects have had difficulty going back and forth between the two. And we've actually seen the effect of that on the players. I remember back when David Bingham was playing keeper for the Quakes, that was definitely an issue with him. There were questions about when Wondolowski was getting called in. And more recently, we saw this with Jackson Ewell, right? With his time with the U.S. national team and then returning back to the Quakes. And sometimes finding a little difficulty getting back into form for the team. Will this be the case with Kade Cowell? Who knows how that's going to go. But we have the game against Real Salt Lake coming up. We have the midweek game against Monterey Bay FC in the U.S. Open Cup. And then Kade has his national team responsibilities, as does Jackson. So that's going to be an interesting thing to look at for this team going forward.
Luchi touched on it, and I think it's important to remember too, with his background with the national team and the coaching setup there is there's some similarities, or at least there's some sort of cultural similarities that Luchi has brought to San Jose that he did learn under Greg Berhalter and kind of in that national team setup. And so when Jackson heads out there, that's where Luchi first worked with him. When Kade's now out there in the national team setup, there's a lot of the foundation that was built in these last few years that Anthony Hudson is still following through with. So I don't think we're seeing players that are going to be kind of torn away from the Quake system of play, but maybe in fact, are still getting a kind of a level of attention and maybe even a level of play higher than they're getting here in San Jose. Could be a good thing.
Could be a big benefit for the team. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think what's really good is Anthony Hudson is probably going to play very similar to Berhalter. Luchi is playing very similar to Berhalter. So, remember back in the Almeida days, and something Nick Leyva used to complain about is changing from Almeida to the national team. And I think at the time it was when Greg was first starting out that Leyva got his first kind of run out there. That's a tough change to go from a man marking defense into something more traditional. And then like Nick Leyva got asked to play this kind of like double pivot guy who would come inside and play beside a Tyler Adams type, and then, have to go back out and play, outside. That's a huge difference, right? The great thing I think for Kade and for Jackson is they're likely stepping into a situation where they're going to be very comfortable. The amount of change is going to be very small. It's going to look very much like the system that they're playing now. I'll be interested to see if Jackson does get playing time. Do we see him more as an 8? Or because Greg originally started him off as a 6, right? And he wanted those kind of deeper balls and him spraying balls everywhere. But that's not what Jackson's doing right now because, we got, Carlos Carrezo and Luchi only plays with one defensive midfielder. So my expectation is we're going to see Jackson probably play as an 8. That's something he hasn't really done with the national team outside of the U20s when he did that in the CONCACAF tournament. So it'll be interesting to kind of see, how Jackson steps into that situation, if we'll get to see him. And then also for Kade, does he step into a situation that for him also feels, normal and comfortable and, it doesn't feel like that much change. We'll see.
There's a lot to look forward to with the match, that's for sure. I think this is a good time for us to go ahead and pivot to our final thoughts as we head out for the night. Robert, I'm going to go ahead and have you lead us here in the final thoughts segment. So as we head into the game against RSL and subsequently Monterey Bay FC, what do you think?
Yeah, I said it earlier, the Quakes are essentially taking care of business at home. And in this season, if you can take care of the games here at PayPal Park, you're going to make the playoffs with the number of teams that are going to qualify. If you look at the table, the Quakes have played 5 home games. 4 out of 5 of those were 3-point victories, and now they sit tied for 3rd in the conference. That's not something we would have been saying in any recent season or expecting that in any recent season. So, I'm really pleased to see the Quakes get the points that they need to get. This sort of kind of is a comment back to what Jamon said earlier about they didn't, they benefited from the red card tonight, but it didn't seem like they needed the red card necessarily tonight. They were doing pretty well at that point in the game and maybe could have, really kind of kept that pace up and still come away with a pretty good victory tonight. Didn't hurt to have a red card and I'm sure they'll take it. But we're seeing a Quakes team that's not hanging on, at least in these games. They're getting the points they have to get, and that's going to be really important come the summer and the fall.
Absolutely. Turning PayPal Park back into a fortress as it was when it was a Via Stadium, right? Jamon Moore, your final thoughts as we head out of the stadium here, as we head out at the end of the game. What do you think?
Yeah, nice to get a comfortable victory, right? There's always a level of kind of like nervousness coming into some of these games as to, is this going to be the night that this team gets found out? That we're going to not see the Quakes team that we think we've seen so far. And you saw a little bit of that with the St. Louis game, right? Where you're like, oh, maybe there's, a bigger step that this team needs to take. But they've recovered since then. They've put together a string of consistent results since that game. Now they got to head back out on the road, but they do so, in a comfortable position in the conference right now. If they can get a draw, that would be fantastic. It'd be a good result, I think, in RSL, that team that's been kind of up and down this season. We're not quite sure what we're going to see with RSL in any given week. And the Quakes feel more like a fairly consistent team, that what you're going to get from them. And a lot of it's going to be, can they find the back of the net in that particular game? But they've gotten back on getting some open play goals. The offense looks like it's clicking a little bit better. I think the better movement in the attacking third, and they're less predictable and getting more comfortable with each other. So you hope that means that good things can come. It is possible to go into RSL and steal a win, and they should be trying to look for that. And if nothing else, you try to walk away with a point and try to hold your position, in the Western Conference right now. It's very interesting. The Quakes sitting in fifth, coming into tomorrow's games, and that's about where between fifth and ninth, right, is exactly where I kind of expect this team to be. I think they're a mid-table team. Maybe their upside is upper mid-table, maybe an outside chance at a home playoff spot. And so far so good, but now they got to go do it on the road. And it'll be interesting to see. And of course, we get the upside of getting to watch Jackson Ewell and Kade Cowell potentially with the national team against Mexico this week. So always a fun time. And then after RSL, U.S. Open Cup starts, and that was a kind of a good time and then a bad time last season. So it'll be interesting to see how Luchi approaches a Open Cup game, because we don't really know what he's going to do. If he's going to try to go for it and play more starters, if he's going to go completely with a rotation lineup, particularly with these midweek games. Hopefully maybe get a chance to talk to him pretty soon about his approach to Open Cup and then eventually Leagues Cup as well.
Yeah, lots to look forward to there. And for Quakes fans, we have, the return of Simon Dawkins and Frank Yallop. First time Frank Yallop is facing the San Jose Earthquakes since his coaching stint with the Chicago Fire, right? So it's going to be a lot of fun. And I'm sure we're going to have plenty of more time to talk about that after the next match against RSL. So as we head to the end of the show here, I would like to encourage everybody to check out our website, quakesepicenter.com, where you can find our articles from our fantastic writers, as well as the salary spreadsheet, which collects all the data and in regards to what players are making and what the budget looks like under the current cap situation, who the designated players are, all that valuable and interesting information. That's all there on our website, as well as the Quakes Epicenter Patreon. You can find that there. And for just $2 a month, you can get early access to all of our materials over on quakesepicenter.com. For $5 a month, if you're willing to pitch in just a little bit more, you'll also get access to our Slack, where you can talk to other Quakes fans who contribute to our Patreon. Make sure you follow us on social media at Quakes Epicenter on Twitter and Instagram. And one last thing before we head out tonight, I wanted to make sure I referenced the other group of guys who cover the Earthquakes that I work with over at Quakes After 90. My friends Dom and Sterling and Zach and Bill, we got together this morning and we talked about the incident that occurred in New York against the New York Red Bulls. And we spent quite a bit of time talking about racism in the sport. And we covered a lot of the news surrounding the team. There's, if you've ever tuned into that show, you know that we have a little bit of a different style, kind of like a fan podcast. There's a lot of banter. We have fun with it. So I want to encourage folks to go check out Quakes After 90 as well, especially because this last episode meant a lot to all of us to be able to sit together and talk about these really important issues in regard to the team. So you can find that over on Apple Podcasts. You can find it on Spotify or any of your regular podcast listening services. And make sure you follow those guys too and check out Quakes After 90 on Twitter. Jamin, it looks like you have
one more thing. Yes, I think it's important, particularly Robert and I, we want to say a huge thanks to Jake Pisani, who is ending his time as the Senior Director of Communications with the Earthquakes and moving on to a new opportunity outside of soccer. We wish him the best. Jake, you've been the best. We're going to really, really miss working with you and having you around. And, thanks for all your many, many years of service, not just to the club, but to us personally, and supporting everything we do. This show, just so everyone's aware, this show would not be what it is without Jake's, support. If we had him when we wanted to do this, I talked to him about what we wanted to do and what kind of support we needed, and he's been with us every step of the way, supporting us. Not when we are going like, hey, we want to carry the press conference, on our show over the air and ask questions, and the fans will get to watch it. That was a new thing. No one had done that before in this league. Fans had no access to press conferences back in the day. It started a little bit with Black and Azul, and we kept it up here, with Quakes Epicenter and the Aftershock. And so I just wanted to personally say thank you to Jake. The show happens because people like Jake, understand, what the possibility is for it to mean to the community. And I want to just say thank you to him. And if you guys have anything you want to add, I'll let you do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Jake's been amazing. He's, like you said, been in that role for a number of years now. It was nice in the press box today. They rolled out a congratulatory cake, and we all got to celebrate a little with Jake on his way out. And it was really nice to see the team celebrate with a 3-point victory. I know Jake was smiling throughout it as well. So he's been extremely helpful at trainings. He's been helpful when the team's on the road and preseason and in so many ways. And we really look forward to working forward with Pedro Ortiz, who's our new head of communications in that regard. And he's been great for us as well. So Jake, we couldn't have done it without you. Thanks so much, my friend, and good luck with everything that comes next.
Yeah, and as the new guy around here, Jake he's just such a professional, and certainly made me feel welcome in terms of getting access and being able to join you all and to be able to do this show. So I think it's a really great note to end on. And thanks once again to Jake Pisani for everything that you've done for the Quakes media and for us, particularly here at Quakes Epicenter and for the Aftershock. So I would like to once again encourage folks to check us out on social media. Make sure you like and subscribe to our YouTube channel here and turn on those notifications so you can join us after every match and throughout the week when we produce additional content. Have a great night.